You may recall that last month I was commenting that in the build up to Christmas and immediately after Christmas, we'd seen quite an unusual increase in the number of people looking for properties. And I was suggesting that just perhaps this was because first-time buyers were out there trying to find a property and making the most of the stamp duty holiday, which finished with the budget in March. So let's have a look at the graphs for last month, which is February, and see what happened. And you'll see on the graph behind me that sales, in fact, did go up slightly from January to February, from 6 sales to 7 sales. Now, the average last year was roughly 8 sales per branch, so we're not a million miles away from there, and it certainly indicates that there are people out there who are looking and buying. Now, the next graph is the percentage of those sales to first-time buyers, which has held up at 23%, which is actually the same as last month. So I think that I was right when I suggested that first-time buyers were out there looking, that the sales have increased by and large because of those first-time buyers. As we film this, the budget has just happened. So in a moment, perhaps I can just reflect on what the Chancellor said and the effect it might have on some of the figures moving forward. Now, one of the areas that we've been particularly concerned about month on month is the steady drop in the number of properties that have been available for people to have a look at. Interestingly, in February, you'll see that the graph actually shows an upward trend. Not very much, but it actually went from 60 properties available per branch up to 63. Now, the encouraging thing is that that actually is the first rise in many months, but it's still lagging behind the same figure of last year in February, which was 70 properties available. Now, the final set of figures that we always look at and are really important are looking at the number of applicants who are going into our members' offices and are registering and saying, I'm interested in potentially buying a property. And you'll see on the figures here that actually that has shown an upward growth from 260, quite a big jump, to 293. Now, that's encouraging. Could be these first-time buyers, of course, still, but that's encouraging, especially when you compare it with the same figure of last year when it was only 268. So it appears that people have been getting out there after Christmas looking at properties, and it'll be interesting to see whether that goes forward into increased sales in the months ahead. As I mentioned earlier, the Chancellor's just delivered his budget, and it wasn't particularly good news for first-time buyers in particular, because in spite of what we said, he removed the stamp duty holiday that they've been having, saying it wasn't doing any good. So I'm afraid that stamp duty is now payable on any properties being bought over £125,000. At the same time, he hit the other end of the market, so a bit of a double whammy here, where he introduced a 7% rate for the highest priced properties. So I'm afraid both the bottom end and the top end weren't particularly helped by the Chancellor. What's going to happen moving forward? Well, as I've shown you, the number of applicants appear to be increasing. The number of properties are coming up as well, which is encouraging because there's not been very much people to look at in some areas. So it'll be interesting to see whether those sales levels actually recover to the average last year of 8 sales per branch.